All right. And all right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, that looks great.
Perfect. Okay. If at any point things get choppy, just let me know, and I can make adjustments if needed. So I guess what I can tell you right now is uh, a few things that I typically do every time is I first decide what model I'm going to start with because there are several pieces, and uh, typically I start with the body. And because of that, I will hide all the other things just so that I'm not distracted by anything else. And then let's see, we'll just select all this. And I don't actually need any of this stuff. No, that's fine. Okay, so we will start with just I know we have all these different options. I typically just go with selected joints and everything else just default. So, welcome. How do you pronounce your name? Yeah. Guess they couldn't hear me. All right, never mind. Uh,
They may have audio to configure.
yeah, yeah. So, all right. So just default, and then one other change that I typically make is in the skin settings. I always use the gradient, use color ramp, and this usually looks about like this. So I'll click just kind of here in the middle. I don't know why they skipped this, but I'll just click in here somewhere and then change this to this kind of pinkish color. I don't know. I don't know why some people don't end up using that. Hello and welcome. So once I have the character skinned, I'm using this color ramp. I'll usually start somewhere like on some extremity and work my way in. So I'll, for the sake of argument, I'll start with with these fingers. And oh, sorry, one other thing that I always use and that I recommend to everybody is this brSmoothWeights. For anyone who is not familiar with it, that is the Brave Rabbit. It's a Brave Rabbit tool. So if you come in here, into tools, there's this brSmoothWeights. It's a free tool that he provides, and it is amazing. So I use this. I know a lot of people use NG Skin tools. This is the one I use, and this definitely doesn't have all the same features as NG Skin tools, which has the layers and some other interesting features. So this does not, it's not a replacement in that sense, but it has all of the features that I need. And so this is the one that I'm going to be using a whole bunch. So what I'll end up doing is just coming in, grabbing all the weights, and I'll just flood it to 1. And then I'll skip, so wherever this kind of middle crease is, I'll skip that, go here, here, and to this one, and I'll skip this middle crease. And flood to the next one. Flood to this next one. Then I'll show you what I end up doing. Select all these, same thing, flood. So then I'll come back, select this edge loop and this edge loop, and go to this guy, and then I'll put this at 50% and flood. And that makes it so that I have kind of perfect weighting between each of these. I won't worry about a lot of like the overflow over here because I'll end up flooding it to 100%. And I go through each one of these each one of the fingers doing kind of this very broad flooding weight. Yeah, about to there. And then if any of you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask. And then this one's a little different because we're getting into the palm. So this one I'll probably end up just highlighting and painting this. I'll just go something like this. And then here, because now I'm getting in more into the palm where I'm going to be doing more smoothing, I'll come in here and actually erase this, and also come down here, make sure that that's gone. And I'm not paying super close attention, making sure I get everything. I mean, here, that was easy enough, but in general, I'm fairly sloppy with my initial weights as I'm putting this down. I'm just trying to get very general weights going, and then here come in here and do the same thing where I'll put this at 0.5 and flood. And then once we turn on the finger controls, oh, they're upside down. Of course they are. Then I can see how it's not quite working yet. Oh, and I guess this is one more area I forgot. Flood that. So like it's not perfect, but it's getting there. I won't smooth weights until I've got basically all the fingers painted. At least some rough weighting. Otherwise, I can get weights jumping across from one finger to another. Whereas if I flood it all out and it's very controlled where the weight is, I don't have to worry about like this joint affecting this finger, which right now it currently is. So yeah, just continue. Flooding. Any questions yet from anyone?
At any point during this, I would be curious to hear why you prefer not to use NG Skin tools, whereas a lot of people prefer it.
You know, it's It's not that I don't like NG Skin Tools, it's that the few times I've played around with it, I haven't seen a major benefit in its workflow. I did used to use it for um, the relax function, and that, let's see. Here, let me pull this over. So yeah, NG Skin Tools has the relax feature here. The problem that I have with the relax function, like its algorithm works really well, but you have to select the vertices to use it. Whereas the paint smooth weights, it's paintable, and that makes my workflow go a lot faster. But as far as the layering, I just haven't. In fact, that's one thing that I'd love to see someone else do their workflow who really loves NG Skin Tools and really sell it, because I just haven't seen the benefit yet. But that's probably more just the fact that I haven't really dug into it. And so I don't know. Does that answer your question? It's probably more ignorance on my part than it is like anything inherently wrong with NG Skin Tools.
Yeah, of course. And we're all guilty of finding a way that we like to do it and getting comfortable, and just no reason to shake the boat when we've got it working.
Yeah. I mean, I'm able to get in here and do what I need to do, fairly quickly. So, yeah, just it hasn't made a lot of sense, but I'm always open to being wrong about something, and this is definitely one where I could be very wrong, and I'm missing out on a whole world of magic that I just don't know about. So,
one of the features I appreciate about NG Skin Tools is how easy it makes it to export and import skin weights, which is nice for me when I want to nuke the rig and change something fundamental about it without changing the mesh itself. I can get rid of the skin weights, save them in another folder.
Yeah. And there are several different ways. There's several different ways to do that exact thing. I haven't actually used NG Skin Tools for that. Lately I've been using MGear. They have their skinning options here that you can export the skin packs and re-import them, and that works pretty well. I have a few other tools for doing that thing. It just kind of depends on what the exact problems are I'm trying to solve in that moment. So
yeah, absolutely. And I still need to give the MGear skinning tools a fair shake. So
yeah, no, they're I mean, at least as far as the skinning, I haven't looked into really anything other than these right here, the import export, and they work great. There's they do what you'd expect them to do. So let's see. And usually the hands are the things that take the longest every time. So all right. But once you get through this, and the rest of it seems to go pretty quickly.
would you be interested in a very small tip that I like to do on fingers?
Absolutely. I am always open to that.
I really like working in the opposite direction that you do, starting not from the tip but from the base of the finger, selecting all of the vertices on the finger entirely, and then using the shift comma to shrink selection. Then it works its way down the finger without having to manually do the edge loops.
So starting something like this?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that? That's actually a really good point. So yeah, so like that, and oops. My goodness, come on. What's going on? Maya likes to be dumb sometimes. Let's see, so we'll just go down to there. Flood. And to there. Yeah, that's a great one.
I'm a big fan of Maya's shrink and grow selection. I wish more programs had it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, I mean, any tips you guys have are more than welcome, because it's always those, oh my gosh, I cannot, there we go. I'm always amazed at when like I watch something and someone will point out something that I didn't even realize existed in Maya, and it's such a simple thing, and there's just so many different ways about doing the same thing. And yeah, we, like you said, we get stuck in our ways sometimes. All right. So then, and like I said, I was literally building this rig all the way up until a minute before we started. So I've got some issues like the controls facing the wrong direction here. But with something like this. And then this is where I'll use the brSmoothWeights, and so that has this interface here. You can like select. Let's do this. You can select edge loop, or not edge loops, but vertices, and you can flood to the vertices. It's already 50%, so it wouldn't do anything. Or you can simply just paint, which is what I do most of the time. So, oops. Middle mouse dragging, you can affect the size of the brush. And then here I can just come in and just do some very mild smoothing. And this here, the oversampling, if I crank that up to 10, it's going to like smooth really fast. You can see how that works. So that's useful sometimes, but in this case, I don't really need it to smooth super fast. I'm trying to be very subtle in any of the smoothing that I do. So here's an area where I'll probably come back in and add more weight here. And then remove weight up. Remove weight here. And I always find that just kind of smoothing things and then going back and erasing and then smoothing, and then if I do too much, then I can always go back and add in a bit more influence. After the fact. Then yeah, this brSmoothWeights gets really nice. its smoothing algorithm works really well, where it basically it interpolates all the influences all at once based on how much is already there, and you can get really nice smoothing on the knuckles just by clicking through it. And then definitely down in the under part of the knuckle, you have to be a little bit more careful. Otherwise, you get kind of Gumby, lose a lot of volume if you're not careful.
Yeah, you've definitely sold me on that one. That looks very useful.
Yeah, it's super nice. So yeah, like I said, I just come in here and I'm not being super careful. I'll usually put a little bit too much weight on something, and then come in after the fact with the smoothing and this is something I can, continue tweaking for a very long time. But I try and get it to where, doing kind of this regular fist. Oh, did I miss a control? Just doing a kind of a rough fist. Does it look half decent? And if I can get this to look half decent, then I'll, typically move on to the next thing. Sorry, these controls are not optimally set up. So then okay. And now that I'm looking at this, I just realized I did not place the wrist in the right place at all. So that's lovely. Yeah, so once I get the hand roughly how I want it, my general philosophy with work in general is the minimum viable product, where as long as it's not completely terrible looking, it's you can bend these and it looks half decent, then I'll move on to the next thing, and I won't focus too much time, because depending on what the client needs, I might spend all day tweaking the weights on the hand here, only to find out that their hand is never in frame and they never see it. And so I would rather spend my time in the area that the client actually needs, and then give by doing the least amount possible up front, delivering, and then have them come back and tell me, hey, this area needs a little bit more attention. Because if they tell me it needs attention, I know that's the area that they're focusing on. And so for the moment, let's just pretend that I did a good job of placing this wrist where it belongs, because it's not. I will later on I'll go in and rebuild, but in here, this is an area where I'll come in, and for some reason the default, because this joint comes all the way down to here, it evenly distributes the weight and then redistributes some of it to these guys. So what I'll do is I'll just come up to the top and I'll replace it with 0, just so I can up to about there. And that should redistribute it to these guys pretty nicely. And then we don't need weights all the way up to here. Again, I'm not painting to where the joint is, but where it ought to be. And when I rebuild with the joint down further, these weights will make a lot more sense. And then yeah, so now you can still see it's kind of jaggedy. This is again where this smoothing just kind of finesses that. You can see how it's made it nice and smooth. Yeah, let's see. Just checking that, yep, there we are. Oh, and make sure to save often, because and again, for anyone who's just joined, any questions that you might have, feel free to jump in and ask. I am just currently working my way through. Started at the hand and moving up the arm.
Is this a full body demo?
I mean, I'm going to continue going until you guys want to leave. But yeah, if there's a particular area you'd like to see me work on, I can jump to that area. So yeah, just whatever you guys would like to see. Anything in particular? Not sure.
I'm just thinking.
Your audio came in very quietly, James. If you want to repeat that.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I'm just thinking about it. I'm not quite sure. I guess I mean, normally the hardest part is the fingers, at least in my opinion. So
yeah, it's the part I always spend the longest on, and I mean, we've been going now for about half an hour, and I haven't moved it. You know, I'm barely moving past the hand. So it's yeah, it's definitely the one that gives me the most grief. So right now, one of the things I'm noticing, I'm going to want, again, like I said, I'm going to want to move this joint down here. And so I want to transfer some of this weight up to this joint. And so what I'll end up doing is coming in here and locking the inverse selection, and then grabbing this guy and unlocking it, and then just coming in here and erasing some of this, and that should just throw it onto this guy. Yeah, and it did. So then I'll smooth it.
Is this rig intended to have a face?
It
or
will.
visual controls?
It will eventually. I do not have it built yet. So.
Gotcha. As a secondary interesting area, I think the hips and thighs are one of the areas that people most frequently do incorrectly.
Yeah. Well,
I'd be curious to see your methodology.
I can definitely jump in there and do that. So let me just finish this one area real quick, and then I'll jump over to... So, I mean, this is a bit hard to tell based on, because my joint position is bad, but that is kind of a look at the hand. Yeah, I'll address the shoulder after or later, but I'll do the hips, thighs next. So what I'll typically do is raise this up here, and I'll just check. To see how the weights are doing. So yeah, we'll start by removing a bit of weight from there. And oh shoot. Hold on. We've got to unlock this. Otherwise I'm throwing all the weight onto the fingers. All right. Let's see. And then similar to how I was doing with the arm, same thing where the weight gets distributed all the way down the leg. So I'll just come in here and paint out a lot of this to about here. And then just to add this back in. Not paying too close attention just yet. Just kind of getting the general masses looking about right. Removing weight when, so like this one, there's no reason this twister joint should be affecting way up here. So I'll come in and remove that. And with the oh, that's probably a bit much. With the legs, one thing that happens, so I'll usually work on one leg and then mirror it to the other, but if I select this one, you'll see that there's influence from this guy all the way over here, so I need to make sure that I get rid of any cross influence before I get too deep into it. Otherwise, I'll end up having to fix it on both sides. And so I'll usually even go like way more than I really need to. I'll just get rid of all of that and like not paying attention to the right side at all. Don't worry, I'll fix the knee too. All right. So again, I'm just making sure I don't have any influences that go across. So right here. And then this side I'm a little bit more careful than I was on the other, as far as like I'm not just going like this across like I was the other side. Here I'll get not quite halfway. But just kind of clean some of this up. So it's really just the main masses that are affected. Here. And the same down here. Okay. So then, once I've got that, I'll take the brSmoothWeights and then just come in here. And here I might crank it up a bit. Again, still not being too critical of it. So like when I come in here, I'm starting to lose volume kind of at the bottom of the stomach here. I'm not worried about that just yet. I'll come back and correct that. And then here I'll probably come in and be just a bit more, pull this back down and just be a bit more cautious. One of the things I'll often do, because basically if I paint from the outside, you can see that the radius of the brush will hit too far up here and too far down here. But if I go on the inside, like this, then I can be a little bit, and it's probably hard for you guys to see on your end where the radius, in fact, I'm having a hard time seeing it myself. There it is. All right. I'll come in here. So this is the kind of the knee pit right here. And I'll paint from this side. That way I'm hitting that inner edge a little bit more specifically when things are overlapping like that. Hopefully that makes sense. And then what I'm looking for is just kind of a nice smooth fall off. And then I might have taken a little bit too much off, so I'll come in here and I'll add a bit more. I'll add just a bit in here. And then smooth it again. Back up the hips. Here I'll come in and I'll use the scale and put it somewhere around here. Oh, and use the softer fall off. This kind of paints back in the volume. I'm kind of toggling between like using the scale, and then I'll hit the S for smooth and kind of smooth it just a bit. And again, all these areas I could continue refining and refining, but getting it close enough and without actually getting some correctives in there, it's pretty close for the hips. Then yeah, I'll just keep working my way down. So here, what I might end up doing is pulling this down just a bit, and then the way I set up my my pull vectors is a 90% offset. So it sits over here, and that allows the rig, if you grab it, it'll never flip out. Oh, yeah, my twisters will, but so that's why I have that there, just as a side note. But I'll pull this down just a bit, just a bit more, and grab the pull vector and pull it like this, so I can get a nice. Oh, and you know what?
The 90 degree offset is really nice. It's a great tip.
Yeah, it's instead of just putting it in front, you have to stick it on the plane of the leg, of these three joints, and then I usually stick it right on the hip, make sure it's on the same plane, and then just pull it out, and then you just have to add a 90 degree offset on the pull vector. So I think I actually have access to it right here. Yeah, you can see it's 90 degrees offset with the twist. So
yeah, That's really handy.
Now, one thing I just realized, because in my haste, my rig builder still has some bugs. I actually have the wrong. Let me just see where it's at. Hip twist. So this should actually just be called hip. And this should just be called hip. So, sorry, there's a reason I'm doing this. I have the wrong joints constrained. So I'm just reconstraining them. Oops. Let's see. No twist. Yeah, so there, and then and it will be clear why I'm doing this in just a second. All right. So, okay. So now when I move this, there we go. This joint continues. You can see how Y is pointed kind of forward. The joint I had it constrained to was not pointing forward, so now we get a nice twist distribution down the knee. So sorry, a bug I have to fix in my code. So yeah, then I'll quickly go through this and just clean up any weights that you know, have spread a bit too far. And then smooth it again. Oop. And this can be pretty smooth since it's just a twist action here. There's no bending. And then I'll fix down here. Any other? I mean, I can keep going down the leg, but any other areas you guys would like to see, or just continue as I am?
I guess the
The one other
clavicle.
region I'd love to see is the shoulder.
Yeah.
Kind of the bane of every rigger.
Yeah, the shoulder is always a fun. All right, yeah. So, yeah, I think you guys get the general idea here with the rest of this. So yeah, I'll just move back up to the shoulder. Yeah, so I just go through and do the same thing, smooth this out. That should be fine. So here in the shoulder, what I usually do is I'll pull it. This is pretty extreme, so I just pull it a little bit, and I usually start. Oh, let's see. And controllers. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's one thing I forgot until I just did it. For those of you who don't know, if you click on Show and you hold down Control, when you go through here, you can click, and it won't disappear each time. So otherwise, if you don't hold down control, it disappears. So anyway, just a little tip. So yeah, what I'll end up doing is I'll first come in here and I'll just get rid of all the weights that the arm has on the chest area. So this is usually pretty broad. And I might, go a bit far, but I can always add the weight back in if I need.
I have to go, guys. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks for coming.
No worries.
So yeah, so then I can grab this guy, and it looks like it's affecting the ear a bit. Oh my gosh, there we go. I'll grab the clavicle, and this one's usually pretty bad. And here, what I might end up doing is just isolating. So, I know I don't want any of this, or down here, and I'll just flood this to 0. Then let's see. And then I'll usually pull the clavicle up so I can kind of see, and you get kind of this bat wing look with it, so you got to be careful how much influence you leave on here. So this is one where I'll go to scale, set it to a pretty high number, and just kind of remove, smooth, just remove some of the weight. It's usually you don't want the breast to be pulled too far up by the clavicle, just kind of a hint of it. Maybe just a hair more. And then you also don't want, let's see, yeah, you don't want it going too far up the neck either, so. Then come in here and remove the influence. I think the general theme is to paint in really broad regions, not getting too hung up on getting it perfect at first. Just making sure that each area in general affects where it ought to and doesn't go outside of that area too much. So here I know that this shouldn't go down here all that much. It shouldn't get up too high. But I'm not spending too much time worrying how far it goes. Like that one does not have influence. Oh, and I probably have some of these fingers still in here. Yeah. So what I'll end up doing is just flooding it to 0 because I know I don't need those fingers in there. And then I'll remove unused influences to to get rid of those. Yeah. And then, yeah, just come in here and smooth out everything. So I usually try and put it in not a crazy extreme pose, but just something where everything is moving at least a little bit so that as I'm painting I can see, is this going where I need it to? So like the elbow here, I can see that like that's not looking quite right yet. So I'll come in here and I can smooth it and I can see, all right, like this area is, I got a bit too much in here. So because it's bent, I can just come in and add a little bit back in. And remove some from this side. I'll pull it into these extreme positions, and it's not that it's going to need to live up to all of these things because this is anatomically impossible, but just want to see where it's breaking, what causes it to have these weird bumps. So yeah, I mean, whenever you put your arms up into T-pose, it's hard to keep your clavicle from raising. So you'd want to put it up to see, all right, well, what would it actually, if she were up into T-pose, what would it actually look like? And then you can come in and try and solve these bumps and odd looking things. And really, you can only get so far with the shoulder before you need some type of corrective. But you want to get it as close as you possibly can before getting into corrective land. So I just see how does the armpit work, and it looks like I've got still too much influence here.
Is this intended to be a game rig or a more film centric?
So this is this is going to be used for a short film. So right now it is fairly simple, but yeah, this particular rig setup I've used for both games and for feature films. Now, obviously, the feature films, you add a bunch of, you add correctives, you add other deformers and other things on top of it. But this is usually what I use as kind of the base of the rig.
Yeah, for sure. And then you'll have access to deformers since it's for a short film property as well, which is nice.
Yeah. So with this, just depending on how much time I have to spend on it, I can continue refining and refining. With this particular client, and what this character, I'm actually not sure what this character is supposed to be able to do. Oops, broke something there. So yeah, I'm painting on the inside here because if I try and paint here, I'm going to hit the arm a bit. So I want to come in here and just be careful not to... let's see, definitely seen it a lot right here. And then I'll turn on wireframe just to kind of see how things are moving. It's probably a bit much moving down here. So any other questions about the shoulder area? Or any other area? Looks like I'm running into an issue with the rig. And that's about how far I will go with the shoulder to start. And then depending on how the animation goes, if they find any issues. Oh, actually, hold on. So now that I'm moving this, I'm seeing right here the sternum is moving a bit much. You can see how that, like that doesn't look right. So I'll come in here and usually do kind of a nice large fall off. Just a lot of smoothing. That's kind of hard to see if you've got the if you don't have wireframe on. Oop. So then again, just to kind of smooth this whole area out just a bit. That might be pulling a bit much on our rib cage. Oops, that is not what I meant. And it's just kind of trial and error and seeing how things look and jumping back and forth. So then, because this character doesn't have a left hand, but I want to mirror it over, I will just... oh, actually, before I do that, before I mirror, I want to check to see what the weights look like here, and you can see that like that's going to cause problems, so I will paint that out entirely. Just go like this. Make sure that there's no overlap. Yeah. Yeah. So then I will grab about there. I just gotta kind of eyeball where the hand is, or where this stops. So again, I'm not paying too close attention because I'm mirroring from one side to the other, and I use Maya's built-in mirroring tools with kind of these default settings. And that usually is sufficient. Then I'll check to see. So one thing I haven't really looked at closely is how the chest joint is playing, and you can see that that's isn't looking great. So one thing I see a lot that in rigs that don't look great is that they will tend to make the rib cage really bendy. Even cartoony characters should have a little bit, not that it needs to be completely stiff, but our rib cages are pretty solid. So making sure that we paint, or that we have the proper amount of influence. So I usually put I'll usually place the chest joint somewhere just, right about the sternum, maybe just a bit higher. And this whole area where the rib cage is pretty solid to this joint. A lot of times I'll see rigs where it comes all the way up and it bends all the way up, and we just don't really bend that way. Now you can put some in there, but like some extra joints in there, but there should be a way to be able to bend from the rib cage and maintain this volume. So that's what we'll try and paint in right now. So this is one where I'll just come in and remove weight from the joints that I don't want, and I'm just trying to roughly get, rough in the rib cage. A bit much. And same thing, I'll remove the weight from here. And then on this particular character, I have this extra joint here. It isn't always as useful as I'd like it to be, but the idea is that you can rotate basically the neck from way down here, so ignore the chest, but it allows you to kind of move the head from really far down. So there isn't a need for a lot of weight on this one on the chest, so I usually paint most of that out. And to do is
it is a really interesting control. Do you find animators often take advantage of it, or is it sometimes foreign to them?
I don't know. I have basically, the idea came from when I started building that control, but on quadrupeds. So on a quadruped, like a horse, it's really hard to get the horse to be able to put his head up where it normally is and then be able to bend down without lowering the shoulders and eat grass off the ground. And so having a control that's back kind of in their chest and rotating down allows them to move that down. Their anatomy is kind of different in the way that it works, and it's really hard to build a rig accurately based on like quadruped's actual anatomy, and so it's kind of a cheat, and I've just built it into my rigs and it shows up in my bipeds as well. So I don't know if they use it all that much. Maybe not, but it's a simple thing that they can just ignore, and if I get feedback that they don't like it, I can always remove it. So, but it's just kind of there by default.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks.
Oh, I'm just going to go like this. And I'm just going to, for the moment, flood this to the head. And the neck joint. Whoop. See. And I'm not going to spend too much time here on the neck, just because I don't have a jaw joint in there. I don't have that set up yet. That's coming later. But this is, I'll often set up a rig like this and send it off to the client so that they can start with blocking or previs, and they don't, at that stage, they don't need, they don't need the face rig. So getting them something like this. All right, let's see how this chest is looking. I like to kind of show the definition of the rib cage here. So it feels like there's something solid in there. We can put this back. So you can see it gives it a slightly different look. So if they need to do kind of a really broad motion, it's meant for a very, very subtle in animation, I would say. And here, this is, here we're trying to show the definition of the hips. I might come in here and just remove some of this. And for anyone who might have missed it, I talked about it earlier, this brSmoothWeights brush, it's a free plugin here. Brave Rabbit's the same guy that makes shapes, a few other tools, but it's just braverabbit.com. You go to the tools and they've got the brSmoothWeights. It's free, it's awesome, I love it. So, and it can do some pretty cool things like smoothing, like seamless smoothing across separate shells, which is a pretty hard thing to manage. And when you need it, it's super handy. Oh boy. Oh, you know what? I think I've got... And like I said, this rig is... it's got some... let me see, sorry. Groups, these should be in there. It's got a few bugs in my build, so there we go. So what I'm looking for is that the hip bones still feel like they're kind of there, but not too rigid. There's a little bit of give in there, and that the rib cage looks like it's there, and that the weight in between is, you know, falls off nicely. So those are the things that I look for, and then I'll twist it and see. You know, that's usually where things start to break a little bit. So come in here and smooth this out. Not too far though. See. The next thing, I mean, I would finish the feet, and on this character, so the joints look like they're not in the right spot, but it's because she has boots. So once I get the character looking more or less how I want, then I will, I started with the body, but then I can easily copy the weights from the body to these, the clothing. So I don't know how other people typically do it. I wrote my own little tool that allows me to copy weights from one mesh to another. So I'll just grab this, grab these guys. This one I have to be, I'm gonna have to paint this one all by itself. So for these guys, I will just copy weights, and all that, basically all this does is it looks at the source geo and grabs all of the influences and then uses those to create skin clusters on any of the secondary meshes, paints the weights, and then does Maya's built-in copy weights, and then it removes any unused influences. So that's what my tool does. So I just run that, and now everything follows along. I'd probably come in here and just check to see. So we get kind of some of this twisting here. Let me see how this is. Yeah, so what I'll do with this, actually, this is what I'll end up doing. I will take these guys, duplicate them, unparent them, and then I'll hide the originals. Take these, and let's see, let's actually go like this. Isolate them, so I'll take these and delete those pieces, so this geometry is much simpler. And then this has thickness, which is always hard to paint, so I'll actually come in here and remove the thickness by just grabbing an edge loop, delete the inside, so then it just looks like this. And then anytime you get like really close edges like this, you also, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get nice smooth weights. So I'll go in here and thin this out as well. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just a little bit less. And I'll do the same thing on this one. select an edge loop, go to the other side. And then delete those. And delete history. And then I can just copy weights to that guy and test to see how it looks, and you can see that it's not great. So here I'll actually do this, shrink the selection, and then go to the smooth weights and just flood this a bunch of times. And same thing here. Shrink the selection. What's going on? And flood. So once that's looking about how I want, I'll put it back. And now these, now that they have nice weights, I'll turn these back on and copy the weights back to those. And then same thing. These I can then get rid of. And that's looking better, but we're still getting some like skewing going on in here. So another trick that I've learned is you can pick a point, and for this one I'll just pick the top one, and you can go to the copy vertex weight, copy that, and then select everything and paste vertex weight, and that will do an even, so all of them have the exact same weight, so it'll keep its shape. Now it might shrink as it twists, but it will always look, that circular shape. And then I just wrote a tool that lets me, so if I grab this guy, I have copy vertex to shell, so it'll copy the weight from this guy, go to the shell, and then paste that vertex weight. So that's all this one's doing. And so I can just go through each one of these. Grab this top point. And typically I try to get a point that's closer to the surface, but since this is a cone shape and I want something more in the middle, that's why I'm grabbing this top piece. It's not necessarily the best option, but for this it works. It should work okay. Any questions about what I'm actually doing here?
No, that's a really innovative approach, though. I like that.
Yeah, this works great for things like buttons on shirts. Let's see, I already did those too. So there we go. So now they're not perfect, but they in general hold their circular shape. You can see, as I go further and further, they tend to shrink a little bit due to the nature of how the linear skinning works. So I'd end up doing it on this other one too. I don't have to do that right now, but that's the general workflow. Let's see. Let's turn on. So I didn't have time to put in the rig for this like spider setup on her back, but this is pretty straightforward because these are just solid pieces. So I'd have a joint for each one of these pieces, and then I'd flood it 100%. So nothing fancy going on for that. For the hand, this mechanical. Oh. Did I? Oh, no. I think there it is. There we go. For this hand, this is also pretty simple. It's just, I would grab one of these and put the weight to it 100%. So this is like, there's no actual weight painting in this. It's just one skin cluster per piece. Oop. Wrong one. And this is why robot hands are so much faster to skin than regular hands. And the biggest thing with mechanical pieces like this is, like, I spent a lot of time making sure that these pivots were in the right spot. So not only, not only positionally, but also oriented, so that as this rotates, we don't get like a wobble in that rotation. Any wobble that we do see is basically imperfections in the model, that it's not perfectly flat or cylindrical in there. So, yeah. So then this whole area, this I would probably also paint these guys to that. Oh, maybe not that. So get that, this to the wrist. Oops. So this is an area where I'd probably end up sending it back to the modeler and just say, hey, this thing doesn't actually move how it needs to, so like we need to make an adjustment to that model. But otherwise, it works pretty well. For this area, I probably won't do this one right now, but I would treat this whole thing similar to how I did this, in that I would create a simple piece of geometry, paint the weights, and then copy the weights to this. And then if for some reason they need more control for each of these like tubes and things, I'd end up putting joint chains down, whichever ones they needed actual control over, and then skinning that. But my current plan is just to paint weights on these, so as this twists, it hopefully deforms this in a kind of smooth manner, similar to how the wrist over here would work. Let's see, did I miss any area? Oh, so I guess we can copy weights to the pants. So one area I always find, like if I'm copying weights from a body to clothing, a few areas that tend to have problems, and it's usually the crotch and the armpit. And so for the crotch area, I'll just lift it up, and you can see it's actually not too bad, but there's just a little bit of funkiness there. So I just smooth that out real. Actually, let's see where we're at. Pull this down. Just a little bit of smoothing makes that work all right. Otherwise, and sometimes behind the knee, that's looking okay. Yeah, and this is an area where I didn't. Let's actually hide this again. I'd need to paint the weights here better. That's one we skipped. Now, she has toes, but because she's in boots, I'm not going to take the time to put in toe joints and paint the weights on that. So I'm just going to treat it as one solid toe. That's why our new luxury car guarantee includes 24-hour test drives, so you can find the perfect fit. Where should you? CarMax. I think the sketchy website I brought this proof from stole. Actually, that shouldn't have any weight. All right. You looked on the right side. That's my eternal sun protection. Is something brighter. You see how far this game can go. So we take it and run. And I mean, at this point, pretty much I would continue refining some areas, but it's pretty close to where I would end up delivering this as a first rough pass, so that the client could look at it and tell me what areas they find need more attention. Obviously, I would still need to put the boots back on. Any questions, though? Or areas that I missed that you'd like to see?
Can you explain again when you use the brush tool, or the scale brush tool?
Yeah. So the scale brush. Are you familiar at all with how it works? Or
not entirely.
No, that's fine.
No.
So the scale brush, what it does is the skin cluster has each vertice has a influence. Each joint has an influence on each vertice to a certain extent. If it's got, so like here, this vertice has 100% influence. Or sorry, my goodness, I can't talk today. This joint here has 100% influence on this vertice. And so if we look at the component editor and go to the smooth skin, we can see that L ball joint has an influence of 1, and and the skin weights are normalized, meaning it can only be a total of 1. So if I come down to one of these, like this vertice here, it has 3 influences, and the 3 of these add up to a total of 1, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
That's a little, in case anyone doesn't know how that all works, it's a normalized system where it adds up to 1. So when you're using the scale brush, it is by a certain amount. So if I put this to, let's say, 0.8, and I select this vertice and hit flood, it will take the amount of influence that L ball joint has on that, and multiplied that influence by 0.8. So it is no longer, so let's see if I select that, it's now at 0.8, and then it distributed the 0.2 to these two joints. So it's a way of saying remove influence by a certain percentage. I guess that's the technical definition of it. But just on a practical level, it's a way of saying just scrape a little bit off. I use it kind of the opposite to add. So if I'll use replace, just say I want this exact value. I want it to be exactly 100%. But the add will give you, if I want to just add exactly 0.01, it'll add that amount, and then the scale will multiply whatever it is down. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so when I'm in here and I see, oh, you know what, I've just got too much influence here, I will put it to a high number, meaning it's not removing a whole lot. It's a high percentage that it's keeping.
Okay.
So as I do this, you can see it's removing it, but not very quickly. If I move this down lower, it removes it a lot faster. It's like cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half every time I do that when it's at this 0.45. Now, the thing you have to be careful with whenever you're using the scale or replace, if you're using less than 1, is that it's taking weight away from a current influence, and then Maya is just deciding where to put that influence. So it could be, it usually tries to put it to close influences. So for example, this vertice has influence on the ball, but then also on the ankle. And most of that weight is on the ankle. And so when I remove from the ball, it's going to say, all right, well, the majority of it I'll put on the ankle. But if it's got some weight on, from this up here, you could be throwing weights from here up to this influence. So that can happen, but it's usually not that big of an issue. So this is another area where, because this tread has like a lot of pieces, and it's a little bit difficult to paint all this, I might end up going in here and creating a duplicate like I did for the wristband, simplifying the geo, painting the weights, and then copying it back. In this case, what I'll probably try doing is just isolating it, selecting something like this, and then just flooding it to the ball. There we go. And then selecting in this area and smoothing. Let's smooth once or twice, and then remove this top, and I just want to smooth the bottom area. Whoops. And again, I could spend a long time on this, but if the client never actually looks at the toes, then I'm wasting my time. So I'll usually stop before it looks as good as it probably ought to. The pants looked pretty good. Let's see. So then she's got this kind of bra thing. I will just copy weights, and then I don't, for this particular project, I don't think he's going to need any control over this bra. I think it just needs to follow along. So as long as this in general looks all right, I might come up here. One thing it's doing is it's pinching along here and kind of shrinking, losing volume. And so another thing that you can do is similar to what we did on these spikes. So we can go up here and say, all right, I want this vertice. I'm going to actually, let's lift this up so you can see what's going on. So I want this vertice. I'm going to copy the vertex weights and then select like an edge loop, and I'm sorry, right here, and paste vertex weights, and then it'll still follow along, but it maintains its volume. Now that can be kind of a pain to do for this whole thing. So again, I have another tool that I wrote that lets me do this. Let's see, rather quickly. So I just select an edge loop, and what it does is it goes along the edge loop, grabs the vertice, and then finds the perpendicular edge loop and does that exact same process where it grabs the weight from this vert and then copies it to the perpendicular edge loop. So just have that copy vertex loops on edge, and that will do just that. Now the whole thing maintains its volume, but it still follows along. Probably won't need to do that for the other section. Yeah, it seems to be all right. I could go in here and set up a rig for this knot. I don't know that it's necessary, so for the moment I'm going to just leave it as it is, and then that's one where if the client comes back and says, hey, we want to be able to see that kind of dangling around, I'll add that in later. Let's see, so the eyes, for now I'm just going to weight that 100% to the head. We've got these skull spikes, same thing. And since the head is 100%, you know, it's like it just needs to follow along 100%, so that's not a problem. We've got these head plugs. Let's see, skull plate. Oops. Smooth bind. Eyelashes. So all this stuff, once I end up doing the face rig, I will do get all these pieces connected. Same thing for the teeth and the tongue. Those are all inside, so we don't see them. But I will attach them just so that they follow, and same thing for the brows. So the only thing that is left is for these guys, and then for me to set up the rig for the spider arms. Now, I mean, I can continue and start building this if you guys want to hang out and watch. But otherwise, it's kind of the same process as what I did with this guy. So any questions or comments or anything you guys would like to see?
That's some pretty quick progress. Good job. It's very interesting and educational to watch.
Yeah, hopefully hopefully that's helpful. I mean, I'm not sure. We've been going for about an hour and 45 minutes. And she is not finished because I still have these other parts. But had I had those parts ready, we'd be done in a few minutes. And then, yeah, it's just this guy. And so, again, I can just keep on going and working on this if you guys are interested in watching that. Otherwise, hopefully it was educational.
Yeah, thank you. That was all super helpful.
I think the only thing that might be a little interesting is how this will work when it twists. And actually, this is actually what I probably would do. Let me think about this. So because I'm wanting, like I've already spent some time on this side, what I would probably end up doing is duplicating this, the body, find a center line. I don't know if this is actually let's see if this yeah, that seems to be all right. So now what I can do is I can, let's delete history on this, hide it. I can take the weights I've already painted and copy them to this duplicate. And then we'll hide the
Do you
existing.
have preferred settings for your copy weights?
I just
There's lots of debate about that one.
I just use the default.
Just straight closest. Gotcha.
Yep. You know, I guess there are times when it might be useful, like with UV space, if you've got a character that is not symmetrical in pose, but is symmetrical in UV, like UV space. That could be useful. I've never really needed it, so I don't know. Just the default seems to work just fine for me.
Gotcha. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but closest always gives me trouble for some reason, even with identical skeletal and mesh layouts.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never had an issue with it. So, if ever you run into that, you should post it to the Discord channel and say, "Hey, any idea why this is happening?" I'd be interested to see that because I just haven't run into it. It's not to say it doesn't happen. It's just I guess I've been lucky. So now that I've got the weights copied to this, it's we're still leaving this behind. So what I'm going to do is mirror the weights, and I will do it from the negative to positive. And for this I use the same, just the default as well. And now we should have the same weight distribution as the other side. That's not right. Interesting. Oh, you know what? I know why. Let's do this. So I'll just make sure that I've got all the influences. So what happened was I copied weights from the old mesh, but all these finger joints and these were not actually influences in the render mesh. So I need to actually add them into this guy. So I'll just come in and say add influence. And usually whenever I add influence, I'll come in here and lock weights so that it doesn't pull weights from anything else. Otherwise it tries to distribute the weights kind of like a new bind in around the new influences. So I keep it from doing that. And once that's there, then I can come in and mirror weights one more time. And now Yeah. So now that that's looking about right, I will double check my weighting, which that does not look right. Yeah. That's interesting. Oh, so the brSmoothWeights respects locked weights, so you have to make sure that you unlock your weights. That's why that wasn't going. So now that this is nice and smooth, I will then take this and copy weights. There, and I will hide that and unhide this. So then we can see right off the bat how well it worked. That's not too bad. You know, I definitely come in here and do the same thing. And this doesn't have to be exact. It's just so then copy weights vertex to shell. Makes those hold their volume, and then I'll do the same thing for this because this should probably be actually this one. Well, let's see. Grab a vert there and that way it looks like it's it's a solid piece. Then I'll look at the weights on these. And in general, because it copied from the evenly distributed mesh of this guy, and it sits in roughly the same place, the weights actually transfer really nicely, and in general that looks pretty good. I mean, at a certain point it breaks. But let's see. This probably just 100% there. And this is definitely like this physically wouldn't work like this, most likely, but it looks correct. So I think I'm going to call that good. This is also an area where I would probably, let's see, I might go like this, select this whole thing. Let's see, let's go. Since these things are round, we want to make them kind of maintain that round shape. So I'd select one, maybe more in the middle, like that guy. And this is the same thing where I copy the weights from there and then paste it to the rest of the whole thing. So I'll shift select. Let's see everything else. Yeah, close enough. And this one, copy vertex weights. This is a tool I wrote that takes the first vertex that you selected, copies its vertex weights, and pastes it to everything else in your selection. So, oh, that didn't seem to do a lot. Interesting. Huh. Well, let's...
No, it threw an error.
Oh, did it? Oh. Yeah, it might have a... Yeah. All right, well, you can always... This can always be done manually. So, copy vertex.
That's another great idea for a tool, though. I like that one.
And yeah, I just got tired of coming up here and clicking these. I wanted less clicks. So there we go. And then this, I just go like that. And ooh, that didn't do what I wanted. Huh. Yeah, that really doesn't do what I want. There we go. So again, I'll just, actually I still have it, the copy in the, kind of in the clipboard, so I'll just paste it to this whole, there we go. Paste that, and then this one I will smooth. There we go. Interesting. For some reason, whenever I do this one up here, it behaves differently. There we go. Yeah, then these kind of maintain their hard circular shape while still following the contours. That's definitely one thing. Whenever I've done any characters that are kind of armor plated, like an Iron Man type character, or like space suits, they'll often have parts that look like they are supposed to be rigid or metal, but you fake it a bit. You make it look as rigid as possible, but it still actually bends a little bit. And that's what's going on in here. This is supposed to look like it's all metal and rigid, but really it bends just a little bit and twists. You just don't notice it because it's so subtle. Let's see. And oh, I'm not sure what I just did. Did I change? Oh, yep, I did. Anyway, I think at this point there might be a few more little pieces like that I'd clean up, but at this point this is about what I would deliver. I'd turn off bind joints, lock the geometry, and deliver this as a first pass. Minus the spider arms. So, any questions? If not, I think we will wrap this up and call it a night.
Yeah, it was really interesting watching you work. It's always an enjoyable thing to see somebody else's process. So thanks for taking the time to put this on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to see anyone else's skinning workflow. This is by no means the only way to do it. And if any of you guys are familiar with NG Skin Tools and that whole process, I'd love to see someone go through that and show why it's as awesome as everyone raves it to be, because I'm sure it is. It just has not been something I've spent the time on. But this particular workflow, as I was able to get it done in 2 hours. So potentially that could be sped up, but yeah. So anyway, I appreciate you guys coming and watching me fumble my way around in here, and hopefully we can have more events like these where people can show their thing. But
yeah, thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again. Have a good night, everybody.
Yep, you too. Good night.
Good night.